That's right. I'm the person that reads about a torture chamber and thinks about the legality of it. Aren't I fun?
Salutations, friends.
Salutations.
Salutations, friends. Salutations.
My name is Brianna Bond, otherwise known as No Ordinary Scholar.
I thought it was about time that I preached my piece. Spoiler alert, it's about time.
I'm not a betting girl. That sounds amazing.
I'm listening.
Are you ready?
Salutations, friends. My name is Brianna Bond, otherwise known as No Ordinary Scholar, and we're doing it. September, kicking it off with a bang. Last video, we were looking at the future of technology with Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. This time around, we are going back to the mechanics of yore with Edgar Allen Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum. Now, if you're kind of confused about why the ish and the whatnots, it's because I actually read these books a hot second ago on my IGTV story. Over there, I've been reading through and kind of describing in smaller chunks different stories, different books that I'm reading. I did really just one clip of The Pit and the Pendulum because it's a short story. I don't need to do like 8. It's fine. And then I, Robot, I did 8 because it's like 8 different short stories. And then over on this channel, I actually did a live stream for iRobot where I kind of did like a broader discussion and I talked with you guys. We did some chatums over on the live stream. It was a nice time. It was a great time. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, then subscribe, hit the notification button, and you'll be here for next week's because I live stream on the Wednesdays. So I was reading this book for my IGTV story. I was reading The Pit and the Pendulum because I thought it'd be nice to read for the IGTV, and just as I was going through it, I was wondering how many war crimes are committed in this ever so short story. I mean, I can answer that one for you. A lot. Well, we're actually going to find out right now. So let's go over like a basic description of the story, unless you guys want to go check out the IGTV story. That's going to be linked down below. But if you don't want to do like the whole thing, we'll do a quick synopsis. So you got this guy who I'm actually not sure if I can't remember if the story gave him a name or not, but right now we're gonna call him Rodney. So Rodney was a part of this revolution against the Inquisition, and so he was caught and sentenced to death. Woke up in this just dungeon-like area, completely dark, didn't know where he was, so he started like very carefully exploring around. He trips at some point, and when he trips, he lands like his head barely hanging off of like this just cliff-like thing, and he finds out that there's a pit in the dungeon. So freaks out, like holds up against the wall. That's not good because the torturers wanted him to like fall in it as a surprise. Now he knows about it. So they knock him out, give him some drugs, knock him out, and they end up strapping him down to a table. There's a little bit more light, so he can clearly see the pit, and above him he can see this pendulum that's slowly just like side to side, side to side. Then as time goes on, he notices that it's going further out and it's lowering. And as it gets closer and closer, he realizes it'll cut over like where his heart is. So Rodney realizes there's like some meat. There's some meat, no water, but like some super salty meat that was there to also be part of the torture. So he uses that and he smears it all over the wrappings that are holding him down. And the rats that are like filling this dungeon and this pit come over and like nibble up all of the bandages that are holding him down. They should have bit him. I've seen Fear Factor. Those rats should have bit him too. But they nibble on the wrapping and he breaks free. He's able to get out of the way of the pendulum. And he's safe for right then. So the torturers bring up the pendulum. Obviously that didn't work. Last resort, all of the walls of this dungeon, which are all iron, they all start heating up real hot and closing in, pushing Rodney to the pit. And at the very last second, right before he passes out and dies, the French come in, they've taken over everything, they've saved him from the Inquisition and pull him back so he doesn't die. And that's how we get the story, because he's writing it after the fact. If we're being honest, guys, a description that I really would have liked to have, but they never give, was I would have loved to know what happened to the platform that he's being laid across. Like, they don't describe whether or not, like, the pendulum destroyed it at all. They don't describe whether or not the walls closing in so tight that it's something should have happened to that when the walls started closing in. I would have loved some description as to what happened to this thing that he was on, that he was stationed on, when all of these different things were happening. But they didn't. Whatever, it's fine, I guess. So, yeah. Just hearing the story, we know a lot of bad stuff went down, but we can be more specific. Let's start out by defining a war crime. A war crime is a grave breach of the Geneva Conventions. Okay, but what are the Geneva Conventions? The Sokovia Accords. The Geneva Conventions are basically the rules of war. And basically, after reading through the first, 30 or so articles of the Geneva Conventions that are focused around prisoners of war, I've got a lot of questions for the Inquisition and the American government. Side note, this video just started. It feels like it just started. And I've already said Geneva Conventions so many times, I'm not sure if that's the right word anymore. Now is the time for us to take all of the things I learned from this reading and apply them to the story. Now, first of all, Rodney just being in the dungeon is a problem. In fact, it's several problems. And on top of that, just sentencing him to death is against this whole no retaliation bit. Now, as the story goes on, Rodney ends up saying at some point,
My clothes have been exchanged for a wrapper of coarse serge.
So at this point, we see that Rodney has been denied his right to keep all of his non-weapon items. He's also not keeping on his person his personal information and identification. This one takes a little bit of extrapolation, but not a ton. What's happening at this point in the story is he's looking for something on him that he can use to mark where he's starting this lap he's going to take around the entire dungeon, just to figure out what the proportions of it are. And he's initially looking for his knife, which understandably was taken away, but he doesn't find that, and so he decides instead to rip off a piece of the clothes that he's wearing. Had he been given an identification card or dog tag, something like that, it would be much easier, make much more sense for him to take that off and place it there than for him to rip off some of the only clothes he's got on and use that as his marker. What if he didn't want to lose his identification in the event that he is rescued? I can understand that a bit, but at the same time, he is in a situation of capture and torture, and he was still willing to part with his knife, something that would have been, in the situation, much more immediately useful. So the last few things that we kind of learn over the situation that they do is they kind of stop giving Rodney food and water, and just over time, we figure out that the hygiene there is just not too great, at all. They even stopped giving him clothes. The one thing he was changed into when he got there is the only set of clothes they ever give him, which over this most likely days of events. So what we're looking at right now is about 11 violations, unless my counting's terribly wrong. It's 11 violations of approximately the 30 or so articles in the Geneva Conventions, a lot of which do kind of repeat themselves. That's a lot. That's kind of a lot, guys. But I'm not done, because reading through this and seeing how much the Inquisition just did horribly wrong made me really curious about the things that they actually got right-ish. To start, they technically neither killed nor mutilated Rodney. Definitely not through lack of trying, though. True. But they still wouldn't get persecuted for killing him if he's still alive, you know? You get it, you get me, you feel me. And there were a handful of other things that they didn't necessarily get wrong. For example, they didn't actually end up physically, scientifically, or medically experimenting on Rodney. That's a plus. nor did they actually try and like coerce information out of him using like any of the torture or anything. It was never to try and get information from him. Here's a list of like all the different things that they technically didn't get wrong. Now, admittedly, some of the things are on this list because the book doesn't give a scope wide enough for us to see anything otherwise, but since we didn't see these acts committed, I think they deserve to get the credit for not doing them, right? Oh, I think they deserve something, all right. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did miss my actual, like, kind of go through over the plot and whatnot of The Pit and the Pendulum, I also give more of, like, my opinion of the story. It's going to be over on my IGTV channel. Next week is going to be another live stream talking about a story. Go over, hit up my Instagram, hit up my Patreon. Those two are going to have information about what's going to be in the live stream. Because I want you to go do a little exploring. That's what this channel's all about, right? If you look down below description, there's going to be links to my Instagram, Facebook, noordinaryscholar.com, my books right over here, and my Patreon account. But until next time, valedictions, friends.